How you doing? I'm Dave Kersner. We're here at the IK Multimedia booth with award-winning producer, engineer, and host of Produce Like a Pro, Warren Huart.
Hi, everybody.
And Daniel Elosa, how do I say it? I said it correctly,
Yep,
from our development team. And we're talking about Modo drums, and we'll also talk about mixing drums. And you've done a lot of things on your show on YouTube, which is great. And we've done stuff together. So we're talking about, so Modo Drums is a virtual instrument plugin from IK Multimedia. It is relatively new. It follows up on the Modo series with Modo Bass, which is very popular, and it has modeling built in. So what that means is that it's more than just samples. We have Sample Tank already, which is designed to play back every type of samples from orchestra, Microsoft Orchestra, which you use, and you know, there are drums and bass in there. What differs in these two products, the Modo Bass and the Modo Drums, is that it's using physical modeling, and that means that it's not sample playback, or maybe there's a little bit of that, but it's mostly based on modeling the characteristics of the instrument, and you can actually change it. So you can change the snare heads in this, you can change the size of the drums and all these other things, and customize your kit to infinity, because, you know, and then you have these starting points. So we were just playing a, what was it, a Black Oyster kit, which would be like a Ringo style kit. But put on, like, let's start from the top there. Let's play a couple just to get an idea of what they sound like. So this is the studio kit. And then you have multiple articulations, so. When you play from the keyboard or you play from drum pads, the other thing is you can play from your sequencer, but there are also built-in patterns. So if you're not a drum player, you know, you have those patterns to do drums, basically. No matter how you slice it, you can do drums. But
How's the mixer window?
show the mixer window. So here you have a built-in mixer here where you can choose the levels of each individual kick, snare, hi-hat, and everything. You've got built-in room ambience, so you can choose how much room you want, which is great. And so you kind of have a sub-mix, or you can go out individual outs and run it through T-Racks and Sunset Sound Studio Reverb, which we just announced. And I know you record there a lot.
All the time. Wonderful studio.
You know, so it's the combination of, let's say, everything you need internally inside one plugin. It's a plugin for Pro Tools, Cubase, Logic, and you know everything, and also runs standalone on a Mac and PC. But then it's also a tool that can be used with all the effects inside your DAW to produce like a pro.
So what was the thinking? Because I like what you're describing here on the process of where you got to. By the way, I have the flu, so they're going to have to
Where's my water?
steam this afterwards. So you have to excuse me if I sound strained. Because one of the problems I find with all, and I use a couple of different ones over the years, I'm sure we all have, all sample playback, you know, drum machines, is that we're limited to 128 MIDI notes. And whatever you do, it always sounds like it's incremental. It never feels like there's a natural roll. So was that your motivation to sort of get around it and generate new information?
It's not even so much the resolution of MIDI that's the problem. I think it's just first of all, like basically with samples, I have a sample company called Sonic Reality, but sampled drums from Neil Peart to Nick Mason to, you know, Ocean Way drums. And the thing is that you sample it, and for most people's ears, depending on the track, you know, you want full on, and it's just fine, you know, whatever it is. But when you're actually playing it, and depending, like, let's say if you want diversity for every style, every kind of level of dynamics, with samples, you have to put one in on each velocity on each one. And it gets extremely cumbersome. It takes a long time to load. You have to stream off your hard drive. It's good. I do kits like that still too. I like it. But this concept is cool. It's a little more compact. Takes 10 gigabytes total, I think. Something like that, right? About 10 then?
It's right under 12.
Under 12. So
yeah.
Around 12 gigabytes. But for that 12 gigabytes, if this was done, the level of articulations and dynamics and samples, and it would be massive. It'd be like 10 times that or more.
Sure.
So it's more compact to get that, and it's actually further than that because you can still tweak it. So it's not like these are the samples and this is the resolution and that's it. It's like, well, this is the resolution for that, but if you change the resonance, you change this, here's the samples for that, here's the, I mean, it's actually maybe 100 times what it would be in samples for all the variety you have. So I think in the modeling world, you get other options that you just don't have in the sample world for those kind of, that realism. You know, and that's the kind of stuff that, and there's so many articulations, like, for instance, I'll just play across the keyboard here. So you've got like a foot and different levels of hi-hat. Some percussion too. And then more snares, more toms. Now this isn't mapped the way, you can remap and things, but this isn't mapped the way that I play it. But so I don't know where everything is for me. I'd probably remap it. But so I'll just play around with it and show you just adding in other articulations without like, you got to practice. By the way, you know, musicians first, IK Multimedia. Sometimes it really does benefit to practice your instrument, but that's the cool thing. I mean, you can, if you're not really, you know, a drummer or whatever, you can use the patterns and you can write songs, which is great. But to me, being a keyboard player, I'm like, well, you know, how can I, even if I work with a lot of great drummers like Marco Miniman and Nick DiVirgilio, and these guys just, it's like, all right, let them do their thing, or Simon Phillips. But when I send them a track, the more I can actually send them an example of what I want, the better it is. Because they're like, well, what do you want? I'm like, well, I use this to mock it up. I've done that with Modo bass as well for bass players, and then sometimes just used it on the track anyway.
Yeah, the Modo bass is ridiculous. We all know that.
So I'll play some of this. So, and that's just a little. And I'd have to practice. Like I said, like I'm just taking stabs of stuff. I don't know exactly where everything is. But yeah, so it's more expressive.
I love it. It one of the things that many of drum plugins get let down by is that you hear all the EQ and compression that's applied. There's one quite well-known one we all know. And it's just all I hear is like, you know, so heavily processed.
It's funny that you say that. That's actually, I feel, I'm glad you're validating my feeling about it too, because and that's with samples, and we won't say which ones do that, but and there's a reason for it, of course. They do it because that's what people kind of think they want to hear, is just like in your face done. My approach as a sample library producer has always been like, listen, it's dry, it's natural, and you do. That's why we make T-Racks and all these things. It's like, you have all the flexibility. Yeah, it doesn't sound as in your face out of the gate, but that's the point. It's just like, I'm the producer. I want to, you know, and all the people that you're teaching and everything, it's like, well, we want to produce. We don't want to just be like, there it is, done. So what's great about this is that you do have presets and things that do sound great, and we have those effects, because this is actually one of my favorite things about IK Multimedia, and it's a rare thing. That diversity of the company means that, like, let's say there's a sample company and they're making a virtual instrument. But what are they going to do for effects? They either print it in, which doesn't give you flexibility, and that's what you're talking about. If you don't like the sound, that's it. You can't get rid of the compression and all the processing, right, and EQ. So if you have a natural sound, do they make modeled effects, like models of all the famous compressors and EQs? Probably not, but IK does, and that's what I love. So even some of the best sample companies actually don't do that. Or let's say you're playing a guitar sound, or the Modo bass, and you want to run it through a guitar amp. Well, IK happens to make, for bass, the official Ampeg, you know, bass amps and stuff, or guitar amps. So I love the way it all ties in. You know, like a sample tank, for me, it's just like, when I'm playing a Rhodes, I want to pull up a model of a CE1 chorus, which is what I have, or a Phase 90, you know what I mean? That's it. Like, I don't want just some generic phaser. I want the phaser and things like that, and other people do too. Musicians love that. So with this, we have a little bit of the technology from T-Racks inside, built in. We've got some of the technology that we're using in the new Sunset Sound Studio Reverb, which we've announced, which uses a combination of modeling and convolution to recreate the actual rooms, the play reverbs room and everything. So yeah, so you have a full production studio inside a plugin, and the total flexibility to get it to sound the way you want. You're not stuck with the sound. You can tailor it to your needs. You want to play some of the different kits just to show the variety? Let's do that DJ Entelman one.
The gentleman.
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 Give it a real clicky kick. Oh, whatever. But, you know, it's fun. Okay, let's play another one. Jazzy. Which jazzy was, ironically, I found it to be...
Bonham.
Yeah, the Bonham.
Yeah.
This was just Bonham. Is it still loading or something?
It's up.
Oh, yeah,
It's
right.
just
I put a hi-hat here, that's why
Yeah.
I played the tom there. Also, you got dynamics. So,
I love the snare on that.
yeah, that's
It's
really.
really
Now, of course,
slighly uneven ring, like
yeah,
a
you got a
snare
lot of
really
room.
is.
Put it on the mixer for a second.
Beautiful.
Yeah, let's go to the mixer.
And let's go to snare. And yeah, so you got a compressor on there. So you could turn that off. You can, yep. And then, is there a room? What's the room mix on that? Can you adjust it there or no?
Yeah, it's a little high. We can lower it from here.
Cool. So again, you know, you could just tweak and tweak and tweak. Let's play another kit. So these are the different model starting points. Well, actually, you know what? Let's keep that kit for a second, actually. All right, now let's go customize. And let's say, all right, you know what? I like that kit, actually, and I like that snare, but what other snares can I try? Try another snare. So you just click that, and you see the visual of it. Well, I'll put that one back. Let's take a drum and bass. That's fun.
That's a high-tuned Black Beauty. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And what's that one? A little piccolo. Now, what's cool, I have to say, is what's the price of this? $299 or something?
$249.
$249. Okay.
That's really good.
You know, I mean, I make
Really
sample
good.
library packs for Sample Tank and for other sound, and this one you almost don't need any sound bass. I mean, all this comes with it. Everything.
You trying to put yourself out of business?
No, but I'm just talking the reality here. You know, and to be honest with you, for me, to give you an answer to that, the only reason I would say people should buy sample packs versus this, or not in addition to this. This is like, to me, it would be like the core. In fact, it is, for me, the core that I have of my setup. And then the sample packs are like, let's say I recorded with Hugh Padgham at Genesis Studio, that specific sound.
Yep.
So when I want a specific sound that's recorded at a studio, I use sample packs. But when I want to just write a song and pull up, you know, whatever, and experiment, and that's what I love. You know, I have a V drum, you know, and I used to, and this goes to me. I haven't done the latest V drum, and probably they've gone further with it. But the one that I liked, actually, the fact it was a bit of modeling, and then you could tweak all the things. And so I was very excited about this. I had nothing to do with the development of this. I do the sample stuff. But for me, I was like, as a sample guy, you know, I was like, let me see how well this. I'm like, all right, you can really, you know, have some fun. It's so fast.
Good job, Daniel.
Well, he didn't develop it all, right?
No.
But he's part of the
Part
testing
of it.
team. Yeah, no, the brilliant engineers at IK, actually many of them have been here. And yeah, they just, each time there's a new product, there's what I love about the development at IK is that it pushes things forward. You know, it isn't just a Me Too product. It's kind of like, well, what's missing? What can we not really do well enough as musicians? You know, and to me, it's like, well, I've got tons of samples. You've got tons of samples. All that stuff is great, especially when you know specifically that you want like a Bonham sound, and either you recorded it or you have a sample library that's like, yeah, they went to the trouble and they got a Bonham kit and you know all that, right? But or also we record live drums still, which I do just because I have tons of samples. I'll still do live drums, but to have this is speed. Tell us a little bit, how important is the workflow at speed, would you say, when you talk to people? And
Well, it's hugely important. This comes down to the difference between, if you've got a drummer in a room, great, because you've got their creativity. You know, you've got a guy, a girl in a room, that comes in, plays parts, can breathe around the song. But when you're working on your own, that's a whole different thing. I mean, I play drums really badly. You've probably seen me play drums. It's pretty awful. But enough to do videos and show off different pieces of equipment. But I usually end up doing this because I get a result so much quicker. Because I play drums badly, and then I edit it, and then I put samples on to make them sound good. And then I'm like, why did I just spend 2 hours doing that when I could have just played it the first time with decent sounds? So, yes, workflow, when you're working on your own, this is huge.
Yeah.
Exactly like you described. You're sending drums to Simon Phillips, but you've already given him the ideas of the parts. Even if he then takes it to the next level, it doesn't matter. You've given him a direction.
Yeah, and I think also having the speed, this is an interesting thing. I love talking to musicians, and we've talked to so many different levels of musicians from NAMM and other places, from beginner to pro. I mean, to the top pros. Yep. To guys that would even, I love talking to guys that like, oh, I only use the hardware. Then we're talking about amps or different things. Yep. Or let's say outboard gear. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, but you know, they say, well, I only use like a Fairchild. Like I have one. I'm like, well, you have how many? One? Like, well, in virtual, you could have as many as you want. You can have many Pultecs as you want or whatever. And so it's the same thing. It's kind of like, well, I have a drum kit and this and that. And of course, the creativity, sometimes it's good to just commit to one kit and have one amazing player. That's enough. Yeah. But if you're, let's say, in the writing process, or you're conveying, you're a producer and you're conveying to people you want to play, you know, if you have more options available to you that you're familiar with, you get familiar with the plugin, you get familiar with programming it, however you do it, quantizing, I guess, and you can even step it in or whatever, but however you do it, you can get closer and faster to what you want. So like, for instance, if I was working with Simon Phillips, and I was like, or let's say any drummer, let's say Nick DiVirgilio, I'm like, man, I'm looking for kind of like a Bruford-y snare, you know, like a real ping to it. You know, and instead of like, I used to mouth the drums like ping, like, yeah, good luck deciphering what I'm talking about. But like, pull, yeah, you got this. So I would, yeah, not bad, it's close. And then you could tweak it from there. Yep. So not only do you have the drum part now, but real fast you can get the sound you want. And then of course, and there have been cases for me working on a record where it's just like, I realize I'm doing a sort of a placeholder track, and then it ends up just being the track. Or you mix it with the drums. That's another thing too. So
I think, just to interrupt you, I think my first thing we talked about, I still think is really huge. With so many of these plugins, these drum plugins, they're so heavily processed because they're trying to impress you immediately. There's a very famous one we all know, and it's so processed. And when you're up and coming, you think, this is great, it sounds amazing. But for me, it's so stunting, because then suddenly that sound is so processed. Everything I record against it has to be equally as bright, equally as like edgy and aggressive sounding, and it ruins the production. I want to feel like I've got a really beautiful, dynamic sounding drum kit, you know.
Yeah, and also when you print effects into the sample, it's no longer interactive. So the compressor isn't compressing as it's getting louder; it's already done. So it's kind of stiff. Whereas this, you know, of course, you can use it with T-Racks. You have built-in some of T-Racks inside, and actually, so there's so many different uses. But one of the things I just said, just thinking like, how do I use it? And and actually, Tom Lord-Alge's here. Ladies and gentlemen, and I work with Tom a lot, and Tom tells me about like how actually pretty much every track, every song he does, he creates a trigger track, a specific way that's really clever, and basically it's accurate, and then it converts to MIDI, and so he can put. And the reason he does that, if you don't mind me saying, is you know, I'm sort of his student, as of one of many, is so that he has the ability to both shape the kick, snare, and tom, let's say, sonically, and also get more level out of them without having to bring up the bleed that would be inherent in a live drum track. So what I like about Modo drum is that for drum replacement and drum blending is you have infinite control of what timbral qualities you want to bring in. So a lot of engineers have, let's say, a library of sounds. Like, okay, if I need a beefy snare to put underneath this, okay, great. But even if you don't have that, if you're just starting fresh with this idea, you know, Modo drums is perfect for that, because you literally just pull up stuff and just kind of change the parameters until it sounds exactly.
So with that in mind, Daniel, if we go to the mixer, what options do we have for like mixing like the whole kit as a sum?
So you have pretty much every drum element
Yep.
on its own channel, and you see right here, I have the overhead sends, the room sends. You can pan it as you like, and you can also control the post-level fader. You can also send to a different effects channel, which I have like, hall reverb here. I got it disabled for now. And you can also send to as many buses as you want. So for example,
that's going to be the
And
big
you have
differentiator.
inserts, which is huge. So go up there to where it says comp. Okay, and so you have, 4 inserts
Yeah,
per?
4 slots.
Okay, so let's, first of all, let's go to the snare. The snare insert, yeah. Go to that, so you have, okay, go to that so we see the options. No, you had it before.
you can bring it up from here as well.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So look, so you have a compressor, you have a 2A, which is a model of an LA 2A, you've got a 76, which is a model of an 1176.
Gate.
An SL, which I guess would be a model of an SSL compressor, dynamics.
Yep.
So I mean, these are that's what I was saying about, like, it isn't just a generic compressor. It's the stuff that would be
the
used.
busing idea is big, because you were just describing Tom's process. So my guess is that Tom can like destroy the live drums and get tons of energy out of them, and then bring in some of the samples. And you can't really do that with most drum plugins. You can't. Can't tell you how many hundreds of emails I get from people that have like Slate Trigger, and they say, did I say that out loud? And they just say, oh, I can't get it to sound like it sounds great in solo, but as soon as I put instruments against it, I don't hear, there's no grunge, there's no energy. So I'm teaching them to like put delays out of time really low and distort the delays and try and create the energy of a drum kit. Mm-hmm. So I like this idea of the separate buses, because then you could destroy like little, you can make little sub buses, parallel compressed areas to get energy.
Let's mess around with it. Go to the comp and let's crank it up on the snare. Okay, so just bring up the, what would you do? Well, no, not the output. Go up more. Okay, and now let's go to another effect after it, on the inserts. No, after, like you have to pull, go there, and then go underneath it, yeah, and then choose, let's say, a crusher or distortion or something like that.
Nice.
Now, I'm just... Now, go ahead and put that crusher on, well, okay, let's just go individual. So you can put it on each individual drum, put something like a crusher or distortion, go on the kick, and go underneath the comp, and just give it something, just mess around, distortion. Try that.
Some distortion.
And pull up distortion, mess around with it. So
That's fantastic. To me, that's a drum sound. I mean, how many times you get a drum sound in solo, and you think, you get a nice, pretty sounding drum sound as soon as you put all your instruments in. It just disappears. All the energy goes. I mean, that's pretty close to a mixed drum sound for me. I want it to be absolutely destroyed, because as soon as I put 2 heavy guitars in, it eats up so much of the energy, and it can get quite polite sounding.
Yeah, actually, this is still too polite. Why don't you put like, something on the, for me, put it on the master bus, put a distortion on the whole thing, or a crusher. Let's see what that sounds like. And then you just keep messing around and messing around,
great.
and hours go by, and your wife
Nicely
leaves
done,
you.
Dave.
Your wife leaves you, and you grow your hair back.
Yeah,
That's how the
exactly.
whole
I
thing
know.
works. So yeah, that's Modo Drum. So I mean,
Great work.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. I think that wraps it up. Warren Huart,
Dave Kersner
Modo Drum.
and Daniel.
Thank you.